All right, guys. So you've basically recorded your data now, or at least we should have recorded our data by now. So what we're going to do, hold on to that data. If you've got a Google document with that in it, you're going to want to hang on to that data chart. I'll kind of show you how to play with data later. What we need to do right now, though, to finish up this lesson, or this day's worth of lesson, is to kind of just look at what this lab write-up is going to look like. Now that we've got our data, we basically should be able to kind of go back and reprocess what we've done to this point and start to build this lab report. Now, so today, just listen to it, and then we'll start to write it. If you're really feeling ambitious, then you can go ahead to start plug things in, but I'm going to give you a template next time that you can start to fill. I just want to kind of go over what things are going to look like, and then when I give you the template, some of it's already going to be done for you, and then we'll kind of walk through each piece so that you can then kind of fill it with your own words. So let's take a look at this. It's going to be embedded there for you in Canvas as well. To look at, but basically for APA format, that's American Psychological Association. They're the ones that kind of set the standards for how we format certain stuff, especially publishable scientific writing. So this is kind of AP level, honors science level. So if you've never done this before, I realize it can be difficult, but I'm going to hold your hand through it. I'm going to help you through it. I just want you to be able to see this and understand what it is that we're doing. And then hopefully, we're not going to do this all the time, but every once in a while we're going to do this, and then ultimately, the more you know, the more you understand it and practice with it, the better you'll get at it. And then really ultimately, for those of you going on to college especially, you'll be in classes where you have to look at these scholarly articles, and by seeing this process, it'll kind of help you read those a little bit better. So again, I'm not expecting like a literary masterpiece here. I'm just looking for you getting what you did out onto the paper, and this is a pretty straightforward experiment for us, so it should be relatively easy to get most of these covered. So I'm just going to go through this time, and then like I said, next time I'll kind of walk you through actually writing this stuff. So we're always going to have a title page. That title page is going to have obviously the title of the lab, then the dates that you did the lab, and then the date that the lab report was actually finished or turned in, which in most cases is when it was actually published. Then your name, and then the name of your group members, if that's applicable. So if you worked with someone on this, or they gave you suggestions about how to write something, then you would put their name in there as well. And then the first page number shows up on that title page, so that's page number 1, and then the next pages we'll have running headers, which has the title of the lab, and then the page number off to the right. So, which I'll set that up for you on your first template so that you'll understand what that looks like. Then in abstract, it's kind of weird that the abstract is at the front, but the abstract is just an abbreviated version of what your entire lab was, why you did it, what was the purpose, what did you find out. So basically it's a summary of your lab that someone, if I were trying to find out information about your particular experiment, I would just look at that and it would give me the basics of your experiment, so that I go, oh yeah, this pertains to what I'm doing, kind of like the standing on shoulders of giants that the old man talked about in the video. If I can read what you did, then perhaps I'm not reinventing the wheel, so I can see what you've done and decide if I need to go any further. So it's basically a summary before you even start, which for us, you really write your abstract at the end. So right now we won't have an abstract, it'll be coming later. Then your introduction is basically going to set up the background of the experiment. So you'll have kind of the main introduction, and then there will be a kind of a background within that section, talking about why we're doing what we're doing, which in this case it's going to be a little weird because I'm giving you what you need to be doing. So really it's you're presented with the task of designing an experiment to determine which airplane is the best. So you had to first identify what best means, and then from there you could conduct the experiment. It also gives you the purpose, problem statement, and then a question being answered, which is all kind of what we've been talking about. Then the next section is going to be a method section, and that method section is really the entire lab experiment write-up. So it basically it's basically broken down into how the lab goes. So there's an equipment materials section that describes the materials used. So in this case, paper, right? And then if you make a throwing apparatus, a throwing apparatus. So this one will be pretty easy. Then you'll also have a participants and test subjects, which the participants in this are the different types of airplanes as well as the thrower of the plane. And basically it's going to describe basically everything that participated in the experiment, which in this case it's going to be pretty straightforward and simple. Your experimental group, you don't really have a control group. You're establishing a control, if you will, through this experiment. Then your hypothesis, we're going to make it as easy as possible. We're going to make it one sentence in the if, then, because format, which we aren't going to worry about the because this time, because we're basically establishing what the because would be for a future experiment, if that makes sense. We'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to actually writing that down. Variables, you're going to talk about the independent variable, the dependent variable, and then the constants and controls. So constants in this case, factors that stay the same. So same kinds of paper, stuff like that. Then controls in this are not really going to be there, because this establishes the control. If you were to compare other planes to which one you find that is the best, then the best this time would be your control, and then the other planes would be compared to that. So really this time your test groups are your control groups, if that makes sense. But anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit down the road. Procedure is basically a detailed explanation that someone could actually follow to carry out your experiment. So how did you throw the planes? Where did you throw the planes? How did you mark the distance? All of that goes in that procedure section. Then results, we'll talk a little bit about this as we go, but results will be a clear description of the data you collected. So data table, right? Figures, data tables, you need to have XY axes, graphs, charts. So for this one, you'd probably have like graphs of each throw for each plane, so like bar graphs or something, and then you'd have averages where it compares all of them together. Would probably be the best way to do that. And then there's certain ways to name all that stuff. We can talk about that when we get there. Then our analysis and discussion section is basically going to just be talking about, and we'll have a section about this, but basically you're just talking about what does the data mean. And then for conclusion, you're talking about kind of summarizing the entire lab, bringing everything together. What did the data show you? What does that mean about the problem? And then how you could take this further, and it could kind of extend into real world application. And we'll talk about that as well when we get to it. And then your references or anything that you used in the production of this report. So you're not writing the report yet. I just wanted to go over it right now, just to sandwich it in here. And then the next lesson or the next day cycle on this, which will be into next week, we'll actually start writing this thing. You'll probably have a quiz over just kind of experimental design next week early, and then we'll be finishing up this paper. I'm actually going to count this paper as a major grade, so this will be a test grade, and I'll tell you the rubrics on it. I'm not going to be looking, like I said, for a literary masterpiece. I'm going to help you with a lot of it. I want it to be kind of a helpful grade for you, but then we'll also be having a test over this entire lesson, so those two tests will kind of go together and hopefully help you out. So read it now, look through this stuff now. Don't start writing anything yet. We'll take care of that next week. So until then, Hope this makes sense. Make sure you've got your data handy for your planes for next week.